What is up, everyone? This is Keith Flemming from the Daily Fix Show on the Fantasy and Frames podcast. Fantasy and Frames is in the process of moving towards more multimedia content. So I figured a good way to start that was by me sharing my favorite DK lineup each week on YouTube. If you want to hear all of our plays, and that's me and my boy co-host Joe the Brain Matz, that is the Daily Fix Show, which you can find both on the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel as well as the Fantasy and Frames podcast. All right, for the wild card weekend, let's get a lineup that's going to win some money right here. I'm going to go with Daniel Jones as my QB. He's 5,600. I think that's underpriced. This is the game that's projected to have the most points in it. The Vikings defense has really struggled. Jones has scored 18 points or more in 6 of 8 since week 11. 350 plus yards on the ground and 4 rushing touchdowns. That is what I love about Jones, is his floor is so much higher than the rest of the quarterbacks other than Allen, who is obviously the most expensive, because of his ability to run. And then again, I mentioned it in the back half of the year, the Vikings, boy, they've just been a treasure trove to quarterbacks facing them on DK. Daniel Jones had 24.76 points a few weeks ago. Jared Goff, 29.10 points. Mike White, 22.46 points. Mac Jones, 26.28 points. No offense to those QBs. That is not a murderous row. Daniel Jones is by far the best QB out of those 4. I expect him to do very well again this week. Running back, Travis Etienne, maybe my favorite play this week overall at any position because of the value, 6,300. He scored double figures in 9 of his last 12 games. He's 5th in breakaway runs for running backs, and that's important for reference because Kenneth Walker is 3rd in this stat. Earlier this year, both me and Joe were really high on him on the Daily Fix Show for that week. He had 163 yards and 2 scores versus the Chargers. Etienne could very easily have that kind of game. The Chargers have allowed 6 rushers to have a rush of 40 yards or more on the season. That is not good. Etienne has 5 games with a rush of 40 yards or more. I'm telling you, I think Etienne will break at least one big one and see enough volume to be 1 or 2, in that 1-2 range for fantasy scoring this week. So on DK, and he's the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, was 7th highest running back. That is a bargain there. Chargers over their last 11 games have allowed 150 yards or more on the ground in 8 of them. 200 yards or more in 5 of them. And in that first matchup, Etienne saw 75 yards on just 13 touches. James Robinson added 113 on 17 touches as well. There is no James Robinson here. This is the Travis Etienne show. Book it. Elijah Mitchell, I'm going to go cheap with my second running back. Give me some flexibility in the rest of the lineup. I know you're probably going, this guy just came off IR, Keith. Are you really falling for what he did last week where he took 5 touches, turned him into 55 yards and 2 scores? Yes and no, because I'm not picking him for that reason. I'm picking him for the fact that he has 45 carries this year and he's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. If I have a guy on my team that's averaging 6.2 yards per carry, I'm going to use him. And that's what the Niners have done. Even in the games he's played with McCaffrey, he's averaged 12 touches per game in the other 3 full games played with McCaffrey, not counting last week. In the 2 games earlier versus Seattle, the Niners just ran it down their throat. In those 2 games, 75 rush attempts, 359 yards, 3 scores. In each game, at least 2 Niners rushers had 50 yards or more on the ground. And Mitchell has seen at least 1 red zone touch in those other 3 games with McCaffrey as well. That's excluding the 2 touchdown game last week. I would not be shocked if Mitchell ends up having more carries than CMC if this game goes away. I think it will, which will be a San Francisco big win. All right, wide receiver, Keenan Allen, 7,000. When you heard the news that Mike Williams needed to be helped onto the bus after their Week 18 matchup, both me and Joe Matz immediately knew Keenan Allen was going to be in our plays for the Daily Fix Show. And they were. Since Week 11, Keenan Allen, just ridiculous. 5 or more receptions in every game, 10 targets in all those games, 20 points or more in 4 of his last 6. And the Jaguars really struggle with slot receivers. Lamb and Amon St. Brown, who both are top 10 receivers for how many times they line up in the slot. Lamb had 7 receptions for 126 yards. Brown had 11 receptions for 114 yards and 2 scores. Keenan Allen has played basically 7 full games this year, and he's 24th among wide receivers. And how often or how many snaps he's taken from the slot. He's going to be in the slot a lot. He's going to eat the Jaguars up. Trey Herndon, their slot corner, is 85th per PFF. I think Keenan Allen is a real boom play. And what I like about all my receivers here is they all have high floors because they're such reception monsters. So give me Chris Godwin. That's my second one, 6,400. The first week, he had a non-double-digit game, and that was versus the Cowboys. But a reminder, he was coming off surgery, and he had his lowest snap count of the year by 40%. Since then, 14 straight double-digit point games, 10 or more targets in 8 of his last 14, 9 or more in 10 out of his last 14, 7+ targets in 11 straight, and he's going to be lining up against a rookie. The Cowboys slot corner Jerome Bland is a rookie. I expect Godwin and Brady to take advantage of that. Richie James is my other wide receiver, 3,900. He has just gotten better as the season has gone on, particularly down the stretch. Double digit and 5 of 7. That's really good. 15 or more in 4 of his last 7. That's even better. 17 or more in 3 of his last 4. Now we're talking, again, the Vikings. Their weakness is in the slot. Channing Sullivan, their slot corner, 105th in coverage per PFF. James is 9th in the total number of snaps he's taken from the slot at wide receiver, and it's where he lines up 75% of the time. And what I really like about this play is whether the Giants are up or down. I don't think it really matters. James is still going to get peppered with targets and receptions. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson, I'm sure we all remember the last time, a few weeks ago, when he played this Giants D, he had 16 targets, 13 receptions, almost scored a 40-burger. Since week 10, actually, let's go week 10 to week 17. I'm not counting week 18. 9.5 targets per game, 6.25 receptions per, 3 touchdowns. And the Giants, if they didn't prove it in that first matchup, they really struggle against tight ends. They have all year. 8 times this year, teams have caught 5 or more passes or had 40 or more receiving yards. That's tight ends for opposing teams versus Giants team. There's been 4 times this year that the Giants have given up 90 or more receiving yards to tight ends. And when you really think about that, that's incredible because outside of Kelsey, think about the tight ends in your lineups this year that had 90+ receiving yards. If they're not named Kelsey, there wasn't very many occurrences of it. So to do it 4 times, I think Hawkinson's going to have a monster game. The Giants have no answer for him whatsoever. Joe is a Giants fan, my co-host. He says all the time, worst tacklers and linebackers in football, and it shows. Hawkinson's going to go nuts again. The flex defense was the hardest part of this lineup for me. I could have gone cheaper at defense and then spent up at flex, but I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb 7,700 and spend the extra 700 on the defense, which I normally do not recommend. But I think Lamb is a great play. Since Dak's return, 19.47 points per game on DK, double figures in 8 of his last 10, 20 or more in 4 of his last 8. Among receivers, 4th in targets, touchdowns, and receptions. A reminder that Cooper Rush started 5 games for them this year, so that's even more impressive. You could argue he might be number 1 if Dak had been QB all year long and targets, touchdowns, and receptions. And again, he's 7,700, cheaper than a couple of different receivers, so I'm going to throw him in there. And again, normally I never recommend spending up on a defense, but Buffalo 3,300, I just think it's going to be an absolutely all-time special atmosphere for this game. I don't know if Hamlin is going to actually be in the crowd or make an appearance at the game, but I think at the very least, he will have a recorded message that will go up on the board. The crowd is going to just be insane. Buffalo's a great fan base anyway, but with this, I mean, I think it's going to be magical. It was magical last week when they ran that opening kickoff back. And on top of that, Miami is starting a rookie quarterback, which is a very similar spot to last year when the Bills played in this round. Mac Jones, another honestly more lauded and experienced rookie QB, and they sacked him 3 times and he turned it over twice, and they dominated the game. Skylar Thompson has 3 games where he's thrown it 20 or more times. He has 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions in those 3 games, and he has not averaged more than 5 yards per attempt in any of them. That is not going to beat a Bills defense, even one without Von Miller. That is my DK lineup for Wild Card Weekend. Again, we really appreciate it if you would follow me at Keith Flemming on Twitter and at The Daily Fix Show, all spelled out, and as well as at Fantasy and Frames. Be sure to check out fantasyandframes.com, where there is a litany of amazing fantasy football content, and we will see you soon.